Hey guys, I'm here today with Patrick Fairon, co-founder of Lunarspace. Patrick, welcome to the Dopenomics Zone. Welcome to the Dopenomics Zone.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite. Appreciate it.
So Patrick, for all of our listeners, viewers, community members, people interested in participating in Outbid coming up here in a couple of weeks, who are you? What's your background?
Well, I am a 30-year, I would say, founder slash operator slash serial entrepreneur, as most people who love this industry are. I have a slightly unique background coming from the early 90s, being a very young gentleman in the finance industry. So I have a 30-year background stemming all the way from Web 1, really diving into Web 2 as it flourished in the late 90s, and then actually starting to customize and break down my needs as an operator in the mid 2000s. And for the finance industry, it opened up a lot of opportunity in terms of really applying some of this amazing Web 2 technology that was just coming to the market excessively. So I was kind of a junkie, even though I was a more of an entrepreneur, more of a salesman, loved sales, loved mentoring, loved being mentored. So I just have that 30-year history of actually using Web 2 real-world application in a bunch of different capacities, if you will. So just a 30-year, I would say, C-level veteran that really enjoys building things or taking something and applying some good process to it and seeing it flourish or turn around. So, a little bit of turnaround, a little ransom, some incubation over the past 15 years. More importantly, I've done a lot of more custom builds for different industries. But the background is predominantly finance, sales, but then I just absolutely fell in love with technology about 17 years ago, started customizing platforms, and then went real deep about 8-9 years ago. So most of my background is SaaS, software as a service, coming from pre-cloud days, DePIN more so. I like dropping in networks and having some of that control in place, but just an operator slash process engineer, not a developer, not a coder. So just as I mentioned, 30-year founder, entrepreneur, dove deep into tech on the tech side, Web 2 side, about 27 years ago. Most of my initial tech was for my own companies, my own incubation. But for the past 25 years, more of a C-level SaaS, dSaaS, more SaaS, obviously over the past 25 years in terms of Web 2. So turnaround, ransom, recovery, process engineer. So C-level, who's just passionate about building technology, but more for a real world usage in terms of helping organizations lower friction and become more efficient. That's really my forte.
Awesome. And how long have you?
Outside of that, basically.
No, go ahead.
Sorry about that.
Carry on.
Oh, I was just going to say, outside of being an operator myself and doing some incubation, some turnaround time, not formally educated. So most of my early 20s, I spent taking Six Sigma classes, process mapping, Pepperdine, some JCC classes in terms of just overall leadership management. So over my first, I think, 3 or 4 years of just my professional career, just kind of self-educated, I found it more effective for me anyway, just to learn through different experiences, but then going back to the office and actually applying it real world. So slightly different approach. My older brother went to SC, got his master's degree in international finance, and he's the bean counter. He loves it, and I love him for that. So we're kind of a family company. All the beans are counted by my older brother. He kind of counts on me to be that icebreaker, if you will, and bring opportunity to the family that will create some sustainable abundance. But Yeah, this just a humble background, about 30 years banging away with technology, all the way back from the early 90s, when Web 1 was a thing, and we were all kind of being introduced into Web 2 in the later 90s, and then really applying it from like 2001 until I sold my first company in 2006. So serial entrepreneur on the tech side, though, is my passion.
Love it. Walk me through what your product does for your existing clients. Like, what is your current niche that you guys have? And then how is that going to translate to using crypto?
So we're a little unique in the sense that we're DePIN. We like to drop servers into our client's office. So we do look at that opportunity as a zone, and we have our product offerings are what would be considered a digital workplace. And fundamentally, our zones are smart contracts that will enable our clients to be able to retain sovereignty of their own data, their own keys. So it's a real Web3 environment in terms of the API and the infrastructure, in terms of a token-gated replacement of 2FA, if you will. So we started our journey at Lunarspace building a IBC token-gated authentication into a Web 2 backend using our proprietary API. So we removed normal authentication, 2FA. We built it on Juno, and it was great. It was awesome. This was back in, I think, 2022. So we built our token-gated authentication. That's great for Web 2. What are we going to do for Web 3? So the journey was, at one point we were looking at Atom 2.0. I really liked some of the elements when they sent that proposal in. It didn't get approved, and then we found Corium and started the track into more of a smart token contract on blockchain. And when they originally were advertising ISO, I have some ISO background in terms of a work environment. Green, if you will, ISO 14001, which helps organizations build a green process for their organization. So for companies that want to, act environmentally responsible, ISO 14001 gives a framework for that. And it's very similar to ISO 222. It's framework. It's a process. It's very smart minds coming together saying this is what we feel is a safe, secure messaging standard, if you will. So using that and the uniqueness of the Corium smart contract, we were able to design our 2-token reward system. So our Web 2 clients that we customize platforms for are very used to paying us monthly, weekly fees to develop their software and maintain their software. So a lot of times on the bigger builds, they're constantly adding process, constantly adding complexity with more employees as they grow. So having that customized team there to be able to move very quickly with their organization creates efficiencies, lowers the need for more employees or bodies, therefore lowering friction and taking that realized extra income and reapplying it to their own system. So it's just an ongoing improvement process, if you will. So Web 2 is where I've spent most of my time. And in 2017, early 18, kind of stumbled onto Bitcoin. I was incubating a company for my younger brother, and sure enough, it was kind of a Ponzi type thing, and they were really pushing this Apple app that was going to do all this wonderful WeChat type of functionality. And before I went in or let my family in, I said, well, let's just see if they get it through the iOS Apple process of getting an app approved. If they get their app approved and we can download it, we can see it, then yeah, I'm really in. This is fantastic technology, what they're talking about. And the only reason why I can say that, because back in 2012, I had an end client that contracted me and an old partner to build a banking API that would connect Bank of America with law firms. And because there was so much bad debt in the financial crisis of 2008 to 2010, it was going to enable them to communicate through PCI, which is states banking compliance for cryptography. So encrypting name, address, social could not be uncrypted to work with B of A. So we were able to, in 8 months, $1 million later, encrypt that very essential information so that the lawyers in Bank of America can transit information and not expose the end client's ident information. So it was my first successful, painful, very painful, but successful and expensive journey in cryptology. But once it was done, it was just like, wow, to be able to really ensure that kind of a private pipe from one organization to another and not have it be penetrable was exciting to me. It was, and that can sound weird, but it was very cool. And then didn't really mess around with cryptography at all, and then just kept building utility, building real-world platforms for law firms, for medical centers. Mostly financial sales companies love our HAMP protocol, which we can get into. But I kind of fell off track there, and if you can round me back into what your question was originally,
that was all absolutely fantastic. So what inspired you to start Lunarspace and to take this more Web3?
Well, COVID happened. I had at the time 8 enterprise builds, and I had a very small team, and it was great because these are, my clients become relationships, if you will. When you're niche and you're boutique, you can really select who you work with. So, when I was headhunting, as I was incubating my younger brother's company, I found some great other companies that needed help, and a big financial company, law firm, 50-state law firm, ran into some problems, and I had to come in very quickly and replicate their entire system that they took 7 years to build. I did it in 6 months. So, and from a lawyer perspective, when you have a fiduciary to your clients, you cannot just be down. You can't just be ransom. You have your whole life and license, and all of your employees, all your paralegals are dependent on your ability to produce that service and facilitate your obligation via retainer. So those are the kind of things that I found myself doing a lot. And when COVID hit, I lost 7 out of 8 companies, went out of business. Boom, they just shut down. So I retained my what I call my anchor client, which is my law firm, and they're actually the first dERP zone that we're building on top of. But this is a 13-year-old database, so this is the same infrastructure that I've been using for 27 years. So after that, I realized I don't want to go back to just building Web 2 during COVID and in 2021. I really started to pay attention. As soon as this administration attacked Ripple, that was interesting to me. So I went down the XRP Ripple lawsuit and what the SEC was doing, and then looking at other chains and not understanding why, everything listed in that complaint is being done over here. So that was fascinating, and I didn't think that was fair. So from my perspective, I became an XRP army just out of pure, I can't believe they're suing them for this stuff. But more importantly, I do see the technology. I see the relationships being made around the world with the bigger financial existing institutions. And me being a Web 2, now Web 3 guy, so I'm that kind of, hybrid individual. I see the relationships that were made by Ripple, and I value those relationships because that's a big part of Web 2 migration, is working with existing infrastructure and creating that corridor or that pathway to Web 3. And I think the more we create that middleware, that middle API, that middle tools where it's seamless, it's hey, I'm used to using Dropbox, I'm used to using OneDrive, I'm used to using Google, whatever. Jackal will provide that same experience, and they won't even know it. And part of that transition and that corridor, if you will, right now we're a single dirt highway because we're building as quickly as we can. But soon we want to open that up to a 7-lane on-ramp, like a freeway where just all the cars are just coming in, because we have a mechanism, a process that makes it seamless and easy. And through abstraction, if we can remove the stress and what I think is one of the biggest friction points, which is a wallet. Most Web 2 organizations and individuals that don't know our industry yet, that's kind of a daunting task. So we're going to abstract for the zone owner and the employees the complexity of a wallet while having all the functionality of that wallet to be able to ledger the activity, compensate, see their bonuses, see their rewards, all that wonderful dashboard information while being abstract so that it's actually used. Because if it's not usable, if it's not real world, no one's going to use it. It's that simple.
It's like a
So
DAO in a box without any of the crypto shenanigans for Web2 clients who want all the benefits from crypto, but don't know how to get it.
right, and you see a lot of good companies coming out too, like abstracting some of those complexities. So once we as an industry really make it easy for people to just be able to, to hook up their debit card or whatever to be able to spin up a zone, if you will, and let's say they just want storage, and they watch our video and they realize, wow, if I just put in $50 into my vault and I just use it, that it actually will end up paying for itself after 2, 3, 4 months, because of the financial liquidity aspect of it. And this is where we're so excited about Astrovault, because we're looking at Astrovault being kind of our main DEX that we want to, not only almost have Astrovault be that foundational, directional financial component that will help us earn the maximum yield with the lowest risk. And that's the biggest thing I want to bring to the Web2 community is the security behind, blockchain and all the different things that we do. Just the fact that you'll have sovereign ownership of your data. You have your keys. I don't know your keys. We're working right now on our privacy as a service mechanism, which will support our DAOs, so we can abstract the seed and have that link land on a dApp where all they need to do is enter their email and password, maybe reset their password through an old mechanism so that they know it. So one of our primary goals as Zones is that we will not have your keys, but we'll have a mechanism to where for any reason you lose that command center key, your vault wallet, basically the financial treasury of your zone. We have a mechanism where through two multi-key authentication, we can send a message back out to you where we don't see it, and you can reestablish your wallet, reestablish access into your financial zone. So those are the kind of things that we're thinking about for the Web2 folks, to abstract some of that complexity, make it easy and safe for a Web2 organization to know that they have this entity called Lunarspace ground control that can support them anytime they need it. So we are very much that hybrid Web2 to Web3 focused utility company.
Absolutely love it. It's a real problem that can have an absolute ton of customers. Honestly, this could be the foundation of all decentralized business and even centralized business going forward with better OPSEC. So you have a real problem. You have a very real solution. Tell me why your team is the ones to be able to pull this off.
Well, youth, gentlemen like yourself, Timmy Tenderman, Henry O'Neill, George, our lead dev at Athena Consulting, 25 years old. So for me, it's wonderful. I get to work with just amazing minds and youth. And if I can add an element of just some scars and history of business acumen and be able to harness that knowledge, that incredible mind power, if you will, it's amazing. It's fun. And, when you really look at our community in terms of, when I say our community, I look at the Web3 community as our community. It's so antithetical to Web2, right? Web2 is, leave me alone, we're doing our thing, but in the Web3 world, what you find is a lot more open collaboration, obviously open source everything as it should be, very public and transparent as it should be. So, even looking at like Lahaina, that horrible catastrophe. I was speaking to a couple gentlemen in Hawaii that are Web3 Quorum community buffs, love it, right? And we were talking about if there's anything we can do when we deploy some of our product utility in June, we'd like to donate to Lahaina. If we can give them some infra, right? Some treasury type tools give them control over their own voting mechanism if they need it, right? So outer DAO, inner DAO, whether the vote is private or public, we can really start to apply some of those real world utilities to people that need it the most. So a big part of why we chose to start with Corium, because that was the complexity we didn't know if we could do. We didn't think we could do the HAMP protocol from the back end to the zone factory to mint the HAP, swap it for one LSX, and then liquid stake it into our vault. We didn't know if we could do it. So when we got the grant from Corium, we spent the first 60 days, day one, just focused on their contracts. We were writing contracts. I think by 60 days, we had 7 full contracts made from our dApp to our vault to our minting to a couple other smart contracts. We even, I shared with you, we even tried to do our own little auction. We tried to do a reverse Dutch auction. We created a SEX for just LSX tokens at a 60% discount, and it wasn't nearly as successful as Outbid. So we were very jealous at that. And we get it, we understand, the way that you approached Outbids was genius, and obviously the results speak for itself. It was very, very successful. It was impressive. I was like, dang, that needs to be a product. That needs to be a utility. So if someone, can spin up an Outbid that is your product within our framed zone. So for me, in running all my businesses, I don't want my staff logging into more than maybe 1 or 2 applications, period. And in the finance world, you can have to log up to 7 in any given day. 7. Stupid. So now with technology where it's at, we're going to frame a lot of different utilities like DAO. We never want to replace DAO. DAO is great. What they do is fantastic, and they have all this collateral built. Why not iframe DAO? So we talked to DAO. They're going to allow us, we're going to work out a way that if someone wanted to spin up a utility zone, or what we're calling D zones or decentralized zones, which are pure Web3, they can, in the near future, frame DAO. So if they don't want to use our DAO, use DAO. And if you want your team, then you go ahead and bring people into the zone. And now you're all working within an environment where you have storage, you have compute, you have infrastructure. You can set some protocols for the team to say, hey, you're going to do this, I'm going to do this. And every week, we're going to look at our HAMP protocol dashboard and see if we're both holding each other accountable. So those real world tools is what we're really focused on giving the community sooner rather than later.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love it. Not the idea of iframing and having a central access point for your group, your entity. Like that's DAOs on steroids, where you have the DAO stuff, but you also have everything else you need. It's your, 9 monitor setup where you've got all of it in one box, easy for your users. You can make sure that your company's staying on task, and also in equipping them to do far more than they would otherwise be able to. So I love it. And following this idea of iframing of like, hey, other people are building brilliant tools. We just need to make them more accessible and bundled up so that they get in the face of more users who wouldn't even know about them otherwise. That's been my vision all along with building Astrovault. And that the way I see business in the future is like, we're probably not going to get 1 billion people to go log on to Astrovault's website to make a trade. That we shouldn't. That's not how it's meant to be. But what does make sense is there will be an application or a suite that makes trading completely abstracted and incredibly easy. And that suite, that UX is going to need to rely on liquidity hubs. It's going to be some kind of super aggregator that will route through the best liquidity hubs. We designed Astrovault to be the best, most logical, most efficient liquidity hub that those aggregators will route through, and build out Gravitate to be an automated basically automated referral bonus, so that if they're doing the ones routing the trades through us, they're the ones earning this Gravitate as like a kickback kind of for choosing to route through us. Just thinking kind of that level ahead. Similarly, Outbid is really cool. We had a lot of great success launching the AXV token through Outbid, which we designed. We're very happy with how it went. That said, people have to figure out how to like get onto Archway. Like there are a lot of difficult steps that my mom or my buddy's parents like wouldn't really be able to use for a first time. Like, it would take, the barrier of entry is really, really high. And if we can get to the point where that's bundled in for these real world companies where anyone can participate, or other people have different types of aggregators where now you can onboard from your debit card and have gas completely abstracted and not have to worry about setting up a ledger and all this difficult stuff, then that can be so much easier and we can get so much more adoption. Because we would like Outbid to do things like compete with GoFundMe, because it can do things like GoFundMe cheaper and a lot more fun, where you can have engagement on things like Facebook. But we're not to a point yet where we can cross that bridge with Web 2 and Web 3. And what I'm hearing from how you're describing Lunarspace is this is a way that can have that done while still having a specific audience. We're targeting these small to even large businesses and replacing things like CRMs, existing products like potentially Monday, replacing that kind of stuff along the way. So we've already talked internally, like the Astrovault team is going to be clients of Lunarspace. We enjoy working with you guys. And we enjoy partnering with you guys. Like, there's a reason that we chose you to be the next one to use Outbid, because we need to show success through Outbid, and we think that your project is one likely to do that. But yeah, it just, everything you're saying makes a lot of sense from the perspective of growing decentralized business. The purpose of this channel, the purpose of most of what I do in this space is doing what I can to try to grow and scale decentralized business, while a lot of people who are native to Web3 haven't really made that leap. That is the goal. That is the reason people are using this. That is the reason smart contracts exist. Maybe Bitcoin was created to be a new money. Whether it does that or not, like, that's not me to say. I don't think it's a great money. However, the reason there's so much money flowing into Web3 is because everyone realizes that some way, somehow, it's going to make real business work much safer, much faster, much cheaper. And Lunarspace seems like the exact way to do that.
Wow, thanks. Yeah, no, and that's what we're committed to. I mean, even with the LSE token, what we're excited about is we're not holding any for the developers for ownership. We're putting everything into the ecosystem. We want it. It's a fixed supply. It's going to be out in the wild. And I think the team has created 5 different effector elements to it that will create value for different types of investors or people that want to dive into crypto and tokens specifically. And that's where I think the beauty of, risk. And we use a term, TSS, the trinity of safety and security, because that's how we need to think about everything we do, every line of code. And there's a lot there, because we want to make sure that when someone trusts Lunarspace's Zones infrastructure, that it's one of the most battle-tested safe environments that you can possibly place your stored value. And that's really how we'll differ from Bitcoin, because if you ask anyone who's truly knowledgeable about the industry, there's a couple elements that are unknowns in Bitcoin, and probably why Vanguard doesn't identify it as a real stored value, because we don't know the who has the original key set. We don't know the dudes or the dude, right? So we don't know that, and at least I don't, and I think most of the world doesn't. So until that is unsurfaced, I don't see how institutions with fiduciaries would even consider, using that as a true stored value when you take your client's hard-earned money and you're going to place it into an instrument where there's unknowns. So big part of Lunarspace is to remove the unknowns. We want to make sure that once we get through our own trademarks, our own process patents, we're gonna patent HAMP and LSX in terms of a dual token reward system, but purely based on human behavior. We're all about supporting the human being. We're going to use AI, but we're going to use it to support humans to make their job more efficient and more transparent, and hopefully more lucrative with the dual reward system. And that's where Astrovault comes into play for Lunarspace, because we need those mechanisms to help us take that Web2 capital and place it in the right arena to maximize APY while still maintaining that integral TSS. We will never get away from that. We'd rather lose money on our side by spending extra money for chain analysis, whatever the elements are that we're going to put this huge moat around our technology to ensure that our clients can trust their stored assets with our ecosystem and with our vendors and our partners, because we're all taking it so serious in terms of that very fundamental security aspect of crypto. And AML, AML will come in, and we have mechanisms to think about that if a bad group spins up a zone and they're doing bad things, we have through AML the ability to not see their data, not take their data. And if an agency comes to us asking for their data, we truly won't have their keys. But what we can do is we can de-link the GAP, which is our global admin panel or foundation, the ground control. We can de-link that vault so that it doesn't earn any APY, so it can't facilitate some of the little third-party costs. So it kind of shuts the zone down without disrupting our core mission, which is the sovereignty of your own data. We don't want to know. We don't want to have keys. We want to give it to you and say, we'll support you. We're here for you when you need us, but we don't see what you're doing. But through AML, we have some mechanisms to ensure that we're building the right ecosystem and that people are not using our technology for any illegal activity. So we're thinking through not only just the security, but making sure we build a very positive ecosystem for the world and for humans to use.
Yeah, I love it. That maintains compliance while also protecting the security, like you guys promise. Absolutely about it. You guys have, you have alluded to HAMP. You have alluded to HAMP protocol a couple times now. Will you walk me through what HAMP is?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, HAMP. HAMP is it started off with a mindset, a philosophy, but HAMP, the acronym is Human Activity Mining Protocol. So there was an initial urge to use, like Doge, the mining, the hash or bit, to do a proof of work versus proof of stake for the HAMP protocol. Human Activity Mining Protocol is a protocol that will ledger the activity of a user with regards to the UI UX. And every time a user uses a zone, whether it's, let's say, attaching a document using Jackal, making an outbound phone call, having a video conference, within a CRM or ERP, you're moving customers, clients, or products forward in terms of a process. The HAMP protocol tracks the user's behavior and user's activity relative to an action or function, and then there's a value to that action or function. So if you think about the HAMP protocol, it really is designed more for, let's say, human resource departments. It's basically digitally describing your job as it relates to the platform that you have to operate in. So I'll give you an example, law firm. You have a front desk gal, you have 10, 15 paralegals that all are assistants to active attorneys, and then there's a managing attorney. So typically with most organizations, there's a hierarchy. And typically that hierarchy will set the tone. They'll say, I want this to happen. And they'll bring in a COO or an operations manager, and they're required to literally specify that person's job. And if they're a good organization, they'll put it in writing. And if they're a great organization, they'll put it in writing, and then they'll give them a tool to track their behavior. And that's where HAMP comes in. So HAMP is a protocol. It's built in the back end part of our enterprise zones. Part of the reason for the raise is to unsurface the protocol, turn it into a pure API, so that we can put that HAMP protocol on top of other platforms like HubSpot, like Salesforce, other CRM, ERP platforms that are Web 2, tons of companies out there, tons, Microsoft Dynamic, all of those infra that's Web 2, we want to make sure that we can lift this protocol out from the database, make it its own, basically its own utility, if you will. So if you're a company that's spent, a couple $100,000 on Salesforce, you got people all over the world, you have your complete supply chain, everything's built. You're not going to replace that. So we want to take what we've built in the back end, lift it out, and make it to where it can be applied as a bolt-on, if you will, as an API, and then have the functionality all be decentralized in terms of how the API is managed, and have the back end, whether it's HubSpot or Salesforce, be able to ledger the activity and cross-reference the API and produce the desired goal of that said protocol. So I'll give you an example. If I'm running a financial sales floor of 50 sales reps, and I have a hierarchy of a senior, a regular, and a trainee, each individual position will have its own protocol, because what a junior does on a daily basis is slightly different than your senior, right? So being able to define expectations on what you're supposed to do relative to a UI UX in the company's database will give leadership and that individual eyes on. Are you doing your job? Are you facilitating the goal set in front of you? And the protocol will be so dynamic to where you can set it for a daily goal, a weekly goal, or hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, and so on. So for most financial sales floors, you want to give them a daily goal, like, hey, today's the day. Every day you get up, fired up, get in. Here's your set of goals. How many phone calls, emails, voicemail recovery, how many proposals you send out, how many did you get back in, how many did you turn into registration, how many closed, how many paid, all that granular level activity you can design to where an individual's role is completely defined. And then you give them the dashboard to support that behavior. Then you throw a reward token on top of that. Now you're talking about real analytics, what we call KPMs, key performance metrics, right? And you display that openly to the whole group, and you definitely will unsurface users that maybe aren't doing their job as well as they could be, and then the ones that are the superstars, right? And then when you add the LSX token as the reward stored value, once the protocol is properly utilized and deployed, after so many months of customization, which is where our fee income comes into, which we'll touch on because that affects LSE, we take a portion of the fee income for customization and we put it into our reward pool because we want to reward our ecosystem. Our constant goal is to constantly raise that APY. So all of our zones liquidity vaults just slowly climb. There's a nice slight appreciation, and they can take that extra liquidity and either pay bills, reward their staff, or redeem it as the zone owner and pay yourself. So we want to give that type of dynamic flexibility in terms of a protocol that can help organizations define roles and responsibilities, add a liquidity component to it, and then if everyone uses the system, and here's the fundamental difference between an asset-based digital workspace versus Web 2. Web 2, if you don't pay that monthly bill, about 18, 19 days, 30 days, they shut you off. You can't log in, right? With ours, if you fund it properly, and as we're customizing it, we're taking 33% of that fee income and we're adding it to your vault. So we're subsidizing your initial investment to make that asset thick enough to where it can produce yield and be able to redeem that and take that as stored value just by simply using the system. I mean, that is really the quintessential definition of HAMP. HAMP is a ledgering numeric token. It's a smart token, but we built the smart token relationship to know that it can only hit the zone factory, be minted, burned, swapped, I guess is a better term, for one LSX. So 100 HAMP tokens equals one LSX token, and that's why we're a pseudo-stable. We want that LSX token to stay at about $1. So when you're setting up rewards and you're thinking financially as an owner, if my top sales rep has a great week, how much stored value do I want to reward him at the end of that week? What's a good, hey, attaboy, right? Is it $50? Is it $100? So you have some ability to design the protocols to yield the type of reward relative to what your vault is locked at. So we've spent a year and a half really thinking through the foundation, which is the HAMP LSX protocol, because the LSX being the stored value and us wanting it to be a pseudo, and we're not calling it a stable coin, but a pseudo-stable coin. The LSE effector is going to affect that behavior. And that's what we're super excited about. And working with Astrovault and Jacqueline, all of our, what I call our community army, buddies, Archway with the development zone, the Arch dev zone that we want to customize just for people who want to build on Archway and have all their tools there, have their reward mechanism very identifiable on a dashboard, along with our HAMP protocol rewarding them for just logging in and using the system. So they're earning dual rewards by developing more dApps on chain. And that's what we're all wanting. We want more. I want more. I don't want to build a DEX. I want to work with Astrovault. I don't want to build storage. I want to work with Jackal. I don't want to focus on compute. I want to work with Akash. And then we have space and time. And spaceandtime.io are doing fantastic work with regards to more SQL. Like, so a lot, there's 130 million organizations worldwide that are on SQL. 130 million. I mean, if we even scrape 0.01% of that, we couldn't even handle it. Like you said, we couldn't even handle it. So we just want to be very in tune to where if we come across nice MSEs, mid-sized small enterprises, we want to have a very fluid way of onboarding them into the Web3 community and then getting them within a zone and then having them utilize that HAMP protocol to basically after 6, 7, 8 months, depending on the level of customization, their system is paying for itself. It's an asset-based digital workspace. That's how we're defining it.
That is pretty brilliant. Everything I focus on is bringing business to token economies. You brought a token economy to business in a way that packages all their stuff up. That is man after my own heart. I absolutely love it, Patrick. So you talked about LSE. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay. So you talked about LSE being a Lunarspace effector. What is this effector protocol? And how does the LSE token factor into all of these different zones and things that you guys are offering?
Well, the LSE token is a utility token built on Archway as an L1, so IBC. There are 5 major components to the token. So first off, the set supply of 100 million tokens. We're allocating, I think, 600 million for the Outbid campaign, and we're super fired up about that. Whatever's not auctioned will go back to the developer redemption pool. So there's 5 elements to the LSE token, and Henry's done a fantastic image to kind of visually represent it, but I've got Timmy's notes right here because there's so many. So when you think about the LSE token being an IBC layer 2 or utility token, it really is that. It's a utility token. So there's 3 main elements that we see value in. So in the zones ecosystem, it will, if a zone owner has LSE in their vault with their LSX, then when they go to mint LSX based on their protocol behavior, their activity, and they don't have enough in their, meaning, I'll give you an example. They have 5,000 of LSX tokens in their vault. And just give you an example. So the next month they have 5,500 in their vault based on their yield. So they can now redeem that 500, after a certain lockup period, after we're done customization, full deployment. They're earning money now. They're earning LSX tokens now through their HAMP protocol. If they were able to extract 750 worth of LSX token, but they only could pull the 500 because their vault minimum is 5,000. They earn 500. They can redeem $500. The LSE effector would enable them to raise it an additional amount so they can extract, instead of letting it, just roll over to the next month, not earning that, being able to redeem that LSX, it would enable them to redeem more of their LSX, if that makes sense. So that's just one element as it pertains to zones. So it's going to be an effector in terms of what you're able to extract and stored value based on your HAMP activity. So if you're capped, because when let's say it's a smaller group and they didn't have a lot of money up front, and we're happy to get them to $5,000 over, let's say, 4 or 5 months. But they're doing great work. They're using it. They're really pioneering. They set 16 protocols. They got everyone in the company using the system, and they're actually generating more LSX than they can redeem, right? Because those are our controls. That's where LSE comes in. If they had a set amount of LSE within their vault, and this is the beauty of the smart contract that Corium has built. It gave us a bunch of different feature sets that we can do some of these mechanisms with, right? So whitelist black, restriction, turning a soulbound token to an NFT. So if a zone owner wants to sell, we can do a multi-sig escrow and formally turn that SBT, that soulbound token that bases that zone, into an NFT transfer ownership, close this wallet in this new wallet. So we're thinking through from a business perspective and organizational perspective, if there's an exit strategy, we have that well thought through in terms of the contracts that Corium and that smart token technology enabled us to kind of embed within the smart contract. So that's a big one for us because it really supports the ability of zones to pull out more stored value based on their great HAMP activity. The other one would be a boost in their APR, which kind of talks a little bit about the redemption reward within the zone. So if the zone is really hitting certain trigger points, we're going to reward them with more LSE within the zone. So we want to see them grow their LSX vault, and then we want to see them continue to accumulate LSE to affect the vault. So it's all within the zone economics. And then the prioritization in the secondary market for big chunks as hopefully our ecosystem grows. One of the fundamental facts that is so counterintuitive to what most people are used to is an LSX can only be minted through a protocol. So it's a unique token. It's not going to be out in the wild, right? So it's going to take some time to build that secondary market. But as that secondary market grows and people want to unload, let's say 100,000 LSX, there's going to be arbitrage opportunities. There's going to be a lot of ways that LSE can come in and fill some of those gaps. So we're excited about that. So the minting cap also. So those are the three that have a direct effect on the original ecosystem that we already have built. The other would obviously just be arbitrage opportunities, right? All the market maker, the pools, the validator, the relayers, so that there's that component. So the real Web3 opportunists can use their LSE to make a good APY by placing them in the various elements that we're building, right? And then obviously our DAO. So we're very, very focused on growing the entire Lunarspace ecosystem with what we call an outer DAO, and our outer DAO participants are the owners of the zone, right? So it's real people, real world usage coming to us saying, we want to see it do X, Y, and Z, right? And we're going to have a signaling way that the board and ground control can put up for vote. And always, obviously, we like as your company, we want feedback. Just as our alpha users really beat up some of the utilities that we're going to deploy, hopefully in 60, 90 days, if everything goes to plan, then having those alpha users really beat it up, so we can really flush out any little systemic UX, UI gaps, get them fixed quickly, so it's an enjoyable experience, even if it's limited in its functionality. It just has to be a good experience. It has to be easy to log in, good experience, clean, right? So a big part of LSE will be rewarding participants within our DAO and funding Lunarspace projects. So like Archway, we want to help small groups come over, whether they want to build a token or they want to build an application, they want to build whatever, we're builders. So, being a SaaS, and now we're leaning more dSaaS, we want to be both. We want to be able to continue to build for existing organizations or support them while we're taking all of this collateral and as quickly as we can migrating it to full decentralization. But as you know, there's going to be a lot of little elements that's going to take some time for them to be replaced with real good, safe Web3 utility. But those are the three main elements. Zone support, definitely zone owners. We're really hoping that people that see value in spinning up a zone or a D zone, they're going to want that extra liquidity. And then there's the money making aspect. As Archway grows and as we grow, we want to be able to provide those opportunities with arbitrage and relaying and validation and all those wonderful things. And then fundamentally, to answer your question, is the DAO structure. Is using it for DAOs, because we're going to have our own third-party DAO, so people can spin up a zone and just have an inner, like an inner DAO where they can just vote on stuff that they're excited about, or invite outside participants through our PaaS, our privacy as a service abstract mechanism, so that end user doesn't have to have a wallet. They can land on a dApp, put their designated email, they can reset their own password that no one knows but themselves, an encrypted reset of a password, and now they have access to certain functionality within that zone that the zone owners want that person to see, in other words. So if they're only authorized to see the DAO structure, that's all they see. So a big part of zone infrastructure is creating access for outside zone participants and then identifying who they are. Are they a vendor? Are they a client? Are they a DAO participant? Are they a VAR? Are they, whatever? Are they our third-party HR accounting company that needs to come in and look at the data? You know what I'm saying? So giving access to your very locked down decentralized zone is where PaaS comes in, privacy as a service. And we're using secret right now. George is working on wrapping, if you will. So we can really, we're deep into that build right now. So I wish I could speak more to it, but I don't have my head wrapped around it enough for me to truly understand how our development team is going to be able to send that seed and for us not to be able to see it and then service it in any way. And then through a soulbound token, multi-sig, they open it up, they take it, and then it just burns. So that's where we're at in the availability of inviting outside zone participants in the zone to do whatever you've got turned on in your zone in terms of utility.
Absolutely love it. When you're talking about this arbitrage type stuff, a little bit of clarity for our viewers, because obviously I've been following your model and I understand how LSX and how these different tokens work in the ecosystem. And you mentioned earlier that LSX is basically a pseudo-stable, and the reason for that is because, of course, when people pay with dollars or currency of their country, LSX is minted at a 1 LSX per dollar ratio. But only part of the dollars that come in mint LSX, and only part of the LSX is actually collateralized by dollars and allowed to be redeemable for dollars. And so you can have a queue to redeem them for $1, but if you need to exit early, you're probably going to want to be willing to pay less. And having the LSE token kind of helps you with the rights to cut other people in the queue to be able to redeem earlier. So for the Astrovault DAO, the AXV DAO, if you will, we'll probably end up with quite a bit of LSE. It would make sense for our DAO to be willing to purchase LSE at a discount, because we could probably exit it at the dollar rate a little bit faster. And that would be this kind of arbitrage that you're describing. And anybody else who is participating in Outbid potentially, or who is getting this LSE token, not only can you have better voting power for your guys's DAO, for your guys's zone, you can also perform this arbitrage where you can basically buy LSX for cheaper and exit it for $1 and perform this perpetual arbitrage if you're holding this supply caps token, but have a higher vote in the outer DAO, as you guys were talking about, for influencing the direction of where LSE is going. So the idea of this Effector protocol, like, is it a governance token? Well, yes, but everyone has a governance token, and so many groups don't even have governance. So what does it actually govern? And so I really like this idea of an Effector token. I think Tendermint Timmy's done a fantastic job spearheading this with you guys as well, and showcasing that it has governance power, but it doesn't unilaterally govern what is meant to be a decentralized business. Instead, it can affect a bunch of different aspects of this business and give prioritization, give basically like a tiered membership higher, for all the different aspects of the business for those who really want to lean into its growth.
That's probably the most perfect, accurate description of how I think we visualize LSE having one of the several benefits that could make it unique, in the sense that it really is a utility token. It's really utilized, whether, hey, if you just want to make money, put it in the rewards pool and just rip some safe APY. We give you a zone, the dashboard, right? And then when you add, like, one of our simple little services that I think people are going to love is what we call validator as a service. And it's twofold. We, as a SaaS company, we want to beat the Indians in terms of lowering the cost, in terms of spinning up a validator and all these wonderful chains, right? And then support it at a far cheaper rate than they're doing. I think it's like $800 a month or $500 a month. We want to get that down to like a couple $100. And if they use the zone, have some of their LSX subsidize their validation hard costs, right? So that's one element of VOS. But what I really am excited about is the guys that's what they do. Cosmo Haas, they have stuff everywhere, right? And to be able to create a dashboard where you could just put your wallets in, wallet, and then all of a sudden you have all these, we're still visualizing the UI of it. But for me, I would love a place where I would click left nav, I hit my VOS button. The first ones are all the validators and relators I'm financially committed to. And then, just all the way down to the very smallest wallet that has like 3 cents in it, because I haven't closed it out yet. But every one of my assets, I have a place now that's locked down, safe, and secure with secret, to where I feel comfortable being able to put my wallets and have a dashboard so I can see what's going on financially with all my various investments. So that's the VAS. That's one of the D-Zone utilities that we're working hard to launch with our alpha, which we're shooting for late June, early July. And that's why this Outbid crowdfund is giving us the tools to finish and put the lipstick on some of the framework we've already built. We're at that tail end of deployment. First QA, alpha testing, and then beta to our small community to see if they actually enjoy it, they use it, it's easy to log into, and we see it start to thrive with a couple utilities that can be deployed now. The other thing is dERPs. We have 27 signups for our dERP zones. Because I've been in this local area, West Coast, United States, for 30 years, and there's a lot of people that I know in the industry. So going into late third quarter and fourth quarter, we're going to start dropping DePIN, actual hardware wire into hopefully 10, 15, 20 zones relative to people's ability to, come up into, in the Web 2 world, I'm really looking at M2 funding because I just know that even my own existing clients, everyone's struggling right now. So we're trying to really focus on lower cost to entry, put a little bit more sweat equity into getting more zones up. And then once we have our own ecosystem of zones, then we have our own mesh of hardware. And then we can start reselling some of that compute and storage too, back over to our affiliates, and then so on and so forth. So it's much more than just a premise-based solution. It's for us, it's a premise-based solution for that organization, but it's also going to be that vital infra that we need to expand and decentralize our stack.
Yeah, absolutely. Patrick, thank you very much for coming on, for breaking all this down. I'm really excited for the LSE launch on Outbid and for getting Lunarspace some zones for myself and my teams because we need them. It'll speed up our work quite a bit and help us, which is exactly your ideal clients. So for the people watching who are interested in Lunarspace, who want to get involved, who might want to set up a zone for themselves, how can they reach you? How can they join your community?
Best is our website. It's lunarspace.io. We have Discord, Telegram. Henry O'Neill, my co-founder, X, Twitter. Obviously, we're on X a lot. But yeah, just reach out, DM. I mean, we're open, we're accessible. We love having private, intimate sessions with teams. We've built a nice little community with the Corium group, and they're anxious and excited to be able to use some of the utilities that we're going to pump out in the next 60, 90 days. So we're leaning on them for some Web3 interactions and feedback. But we like to get intimate with our clients. We are definitely looking for any referral to a nice size MSE, mid-size, small enterprise to Lunarspace. We're going to have bounties, a referral system, with LSE tokens. So a portion of our LSE tokens are for rewards and for us to be able to grant projects that build dApps on chain with Archway. So we're going to do some fun stuff in terms of creating that excitement to kind of invest in that token, because it's gonna have some real world utility. We hope.
Sweet. Thank you for your time, Patrick.
All right. For the time.
If you guys like this conversation with Patrick and want to learn more about Lunarspace or even participate in their upcoming raise, check out Outbid at outb.id and get ready to participate May 1st.